Hello students, welcome to the lecture on History of Literature. After completion of this lecture, we will be able to learn the following objectives: define American literature, discuss the first American novels, explain contemporary American literature, discuss some American literary awards, understand the rise of American drama, explain Depression era literature, define minority literature, and describe the literary theory and criticism. Let me first tell you that English literature is the literature produced in England from the introduction of Old English by the Anglo-Saxons in the 5th century to the present. Old English is the basic of modern English. A literary work is not a mere play of imagination, but a transcript of literary manners and customs and a sign of a particular state of intellect. Therefore, through literary monuments, we can infer how men thought many centuries ago. Like all other literature, American literature was also shaped by the history of the nation. For about 1.5 centuries, America was a group of colonies, and this is reflected in its early literature. Let us talk about American literature in different centuries. The 17th century. The literature of this time naturally has a colonial bent. The credit of initiating American literature goes to John Smith. His chief books, A True Relation of Virginia, Histories of Virginia, New England, and the Summer Isles, were written to explain colonizing opportunities to Englishmen. Other writings argued about the relationship between the church and the state. William Bradford's History of Plymouth Plantation showed how his Pilgrim separatists completely broke with Anglicanism. Roger Williams advocated not only the separation of church and the state, but also the vesting of power in the people and the tolerance of different religious beliefs. There was little achievement in drama and poetry. Poems of Edward Taylor are still appreciated by modern-day critics. He showed his delight in Christian belief and experience through his poetry. The 18th century. Some writers still carried on the older traditions. Jonathan Edwards eloquently defended his belief in the concept that man would attain virtue and salvation only through God's grace. He supported his claims by relating them to a complex metaphysical system and by reasoning brilliantly in clear and beautiful prose. The 19th century. The writers of this time were keen on writing literature that was truly native. Poets wrote poems under the influence of the 18th century poets. Romantic poetry also came into scenario during this time. The Power of Sympathy in 1789 was the first American novel by William Hill Brown. This only shortly preceded the Gothic romance Wieland in 1799 by the first professional American novelist Charles Brockden Brown. The first novel published by a Native American was The Life and Adventures of Zauagont Murrieta in 1854 by John Rollin Ridge. The first American novels usually were legends and folk tales of Native Americans and also their personal narratives in an effort to preserve their history and culture for the posterity. Writing became a means to perpetuate tradition in the face of cultural disintegration. The United States is one of the most diverse nations of the world. Its literature, likewise, is dazzlingly diverse, evolving, and exciting. At the same time, different novels and books belonging to different genres are among the bestsellers. The list of paperback bestsellers included New Thriller by John Grisham, murder mysteries, alongside non-fiction science books by the anthropologist Jared Diamond, popular sociology by the New Yorker magazine writer Malcolm Gladwell, and accounts of drug rehabilitation and crime. Also, many books by non-American authors and books centered on international themes were also prominent. Afghan-American Khaled Hosseini's sharing novel, The Kite Runner, tells of childhood friend in Kabul separated by the rule of the Taliban. Arthur Golden's Memoirs of a Geisha recounts a Japanese woman's life during World War II. Among the hardcover bestsellers of 2006, we have Dan Brown's novel, The Da Vinci Code, and Anne Rice's tale, Cries the Lord Out of Egypt. Other popular themes include religion and feminism. Multi-ethnic writings, creative non-fiction, short story and short story have emerged and flourished in the 21st century America. With the progress in literature, many awards are being given to writers for their esteemed works. Some American literary awards are Ambassador Book Award, Asian American Literary Awards, Fabry Literary Prize, Hugo Award, Man Booker International Prize, National Book Award, Nobel Literature, O. Henry Awards, Penn Faulkner Award for Fiction, Pulitzer Prize. American drama attained international status in the 1920s and the 1930s with the work of Eugene O'Neill, who won 3 Pulitzer Prizes and a Nobel Prize. Playwrights Tennessee Williams, Arthur Miller, Sam Shepard and August Wilson are some playwrights who are well acknowledged for their works. During the 1910s and 1920s, American drama underwent a radical change. New themes were introduced on the American stage. The two that have a decisive effect on the coming of age of the modern American drama are realism and expressionism. This literature emerged out of the Depression hit America. Photos filled with the forlorn faces of hungry and impoverished Americans that came to characterize the desolation of the Great Depression did not wholly take the credit. They were often joined with evocative writing in a genre that flourished amidst the period, the documentary book. American modernism and depression documentary looks at the tradition of the hybrid verbal visual text that flourished during a time when US citizens were becoming increasingly conscious of the life of a larger nation. Minority literature is the literature that is written by and talks about the minority communities. In America, several minority communities are prevalent, which have also contributed many writers to the ongoing list. The writers are the Jewish American writers, Hispanic American writers, Native American writers, African American writers, Irish American writers, and Asian American writers. Literary theory and literary criticism are the interpretive tools that help us think more deeply and insightfully about the literature that we read. In this section, we will talk in brief about different literary theories and criticism. Some literary criticism are Cambridge School, a group of scholars who rejected a historical and biographical analysis of text in favor of a close reading of texts themselves. Deconstruction, a philosophical approach to reading that attacks the assumption that a text has a single stable meaning. Feminist criticism, an umbrella term for a number of different critical approaches that seek to distinguish the human experience from the male experience. Psychoanalytic criticism, any form of criticism that draws on psychoanalysis, the practice of analyzing the role of unconscious psychological drives and impulses in shaping human behavior or artistic production. Marxist criticism, an umbrella term for a number of critical approaches to literature that draw inspiration from the social and economic theories of Karl Marx. Marxist criticism approaches literature as a struggle with social realities and ideologies. New criticism. This approach discourages the use of history and biography in interpreting a literary work and encourages readers to discover the meaning of a work through a detailed analysis of the text itself. Now let's talk about some important literary theories. Diachronic, synchronic. Diachronic approach looks at language as a historical process and examines the ways in which it has changed over time. The synchronic approach looks at language at a particular moment in time without reference to history. Dialogic, monologic. Works that are controlled by a single authorial voice are monologic, and those which do not have any single predominating voice are dialogic. Discourse. It is the post-structuralist term for the wider social and intellectual context in which the action takes place. Intertextuality. It refers to the various relations a text may have with other texts through allusions, borrowing of formal or thematic elements, or simply a reference to traditional literary forms. Meta-language, a technical language that explains and interprets the properties of ordinary language. Narratology, the study of narrative encompassing the different kinds of narrative voices, forms of narratives and possibilities of narrative analysis. Semantics, the branch of linguistics that studies the meaning of words. Semiotics, term for the study of sign systems and the ways in which communication functions through conventions in sign system. Now in the end, let us summarize what we have learned in this lecture. We know the basic themes of American writings in different centuries. Second, we know about the history of English literature and its origination by the Anglo-Saxons. Third, we have knowledge of American drama and Depression era literature. Fourth, we can name important literary awards. Fifth, we know different non-American communities writing in English. Sixth, we have learned and can now use different literary theories and criticism for better understanding of the text.